actually go live. I'll chat first. I'll talk to Eloise after that, and then introduce you guys one by one. It's really just to set up an introductions initially, but I'll ask you about the organisation to represent.
Of September.
Yeah, actually, advance voting can happen from this weekend, which of course includes the referenda. And talking about the referenda on marijuana today, one of our guests on the program is Executive Director of the New Zealand Drug Foundation, Ross Bell. He joins us by remote. Ross, kia ora, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, kia ora. Thanks for having me.
Firstly, tell us a little bit about the work that you do, New Zealand Drug Foundation. What is it that your organisation exists for?
Yeah, well, we were a charitable trust set up over 30 years ago by some doctors and a nurse who wanted to inject a little bit of science into the debates and discussions around alcohol and other drug policy. And since that time, we've been running programs and services around helping people, doing prevention work in schools, working with workplaces like the New Zealand Defence Force, but also advocating for policy change. Where we see policies and laws getting in the way of promoting good health, then we will advocate for change. And I think the referendum is one of those kind of moments in New Zealand's history where we get to really try to treat cannabis as a health issue.
Aaron Ironside joins us in the studio. Your current hat, Aaron, the spokesperson for the Say Nope to Dope campaign. Welcome to the studio.
Yeah, Morena. And the Say Nope to Dope, 25 different organisations that came together to find a kind of a common thread, which was that each of these organisations is involved with the reality of cannabis use on the ground. So we've got ex-addicts, counsellors, ex-police, those who are involved in drug detection, drug testing, people who are seeing firsthand the damage that cannabis is doing, and looking overseas decided, you know what, in light of what we've seen overseas, we agree that we want to make sure people get access to the whole story.
Yeah, and we will get into some of those arguments and counter-arguments a little bit later on. Also welcome and completing the panel is Janet Curle. Now, Janet, your history, your own story as documented in your autobiographical novel Wildside, involved with the drug culture. This was something that was a big part of your life, and now, I suppose the other side of that, helping people who struggle in the area of drug addiction.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Eloise. Hi, guys. Yes, you could say I have lived experience. Mm-hmm. Now my time is spent helping pick up the pieces from other people's choices around drug and alcohol and any kind of brokenness, actually. So, yes, co-director of the Arapui Rural Retreat. Mm-hmm. That's where we're putting our focus now.
We certainly appreciate your time and your perspective on this. Now, this is being broadcast on Rima and Life FM. It is live to air on both of those channels. Also live streaming on a whole stack of social media. Eloise, how can people connect with us?
Yeah, we just had a bit of technical difficulties with the live stream at the beginning, but we are definitely on now. So we've got a few people already watching. No questions or comments just yet.
However, if you do have questions or comments, if you have a view on this or perhaps something you'd like to ask the panellists, they can do so in the comment section of social media. Now, what platforms are they on? How can people connect through?
We are on the Rima and Life FM Facebook page live and also the Life FM YouTube channel.
We welcome your comments and look forward to the discussion with our panellists. That continues in just a moment.
Excuse me.
And hey, welcome to people on the live stream. Thank you very much for joining us. Apologies. It seems, Eloise, we have a different technical problem every week. This week's one seems to have been solved onwards and upwards. And hey, don't just sit there like a lurker and a stalker. Do keep those comments coming in. And Eloise, I mean, it's going to be pretty boring for you if no one comments, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks, guys. Off to a good start. We are just in a commercial break, which is like 3 minutes, and then we are back off into that now. There are 3 breaks of about 12 minutes each, and there'll be a commercial break in between each one of those. I will start with a general introductory question. Each one of you will get the first question in a break, so I will juggle the order of it to give everybody an opportunity to give their point of view. However, as I said before, all mics are open. You can comment on somebody else's question, or if you have something to add or counteract, then an opportunity to do that civilly is absolutely fine. Looking forward to the discussion. Ross, you're the first one up in the first break, so you'll get the first question from the first break, if that's okay. Good. And just should check where we're at in the ad break. That'll be important, eh? Slightly different screen size here, so I have to reconfigure everything from my login. Apologies. Sorry, people on social media, that's a boring thing. You know, when you're thinking, why am I watching this live stream? After the ad break, we'll get a lot more interesting, and the guests will talk more, promise. Okay. We are about 40 seconds from back into it and live. We've got questions coming in?
Yeah, I'm going off the comment section from the post
comments
yesterday to begin with.
That's cool. So I will not ask you a question at the beginning of this break.
No,
at the end.
That's cool.
Cool. Coming up, we are putting the mics live again. We are about 20 seconds from live coming up. And Eloise, people connecting with the live stream on Facebook and YouTube. We've got some people watching and starting to comment, perhaps?
Yeah. Hi to Isaac and Susanna, as well as Hiro, who are watching on the Life FM Facebook page. We also have other people who haven't commented that they're watching, but we can see the numbers. And also over on the REMA Facebook page, we've got people watching there as well.
Now, this morning we are talking about the marijuana referendum. Of course, all of us have the opportunity to say yes or no to amended legislation which would legalise the recreational use of cannabis in Aotearoa. I know various parties have different viewpoints on this. In general terms, sometimes we think, well, this is like a spectrum between freedom and protection of the vulnerable. However, in this instance, I think it's perhaps more likely that we are on more of the same page there. I think everybody's wanting to protect the vulnerable, except we perhaps have different views on how we should best do that. Ross, do you think that's a fair comment?
Yeah, I think that is a fair comment. That I think everyone on this panel are interested in reducing the harms from cannabis. The question of the freedom question isn't something that I would advocate for. You know, we're a public health organisation, but I think that is a legitimate part of this debate, remembering that there's almost 600,000 New Zealanders who consume cannabis every year, and under legal regulation, they would get access to safe products, not having to interact with tinny houses and all of those kinds of things. Yep. So I think there is a part of it that adults do have a choice.
One of the concerns that have been raised, and this is a comment that we've got feedback on, is the impact on the mental health in particular of young people to recreational marijuana use. Now, you're a health organisation, you've done the research. Is that a concern that you would share as well, Ross?
The mental health effects of cannabis is an issue that we share. In fact, any of the harms around cannabis, we've always worried about. And I guess the flip side of that is our current system actually working to the fears that people have around the harms of cannabis are happening now. And I think we need to get a little bit more pragmatic about what is happening now. I think also the fear that there's kind of this equation that you legalise, you increase use, you therefore increase harm. But that hasn't actually played out overseas. We've seen in jurisdictions that have legal regulation, particularly amongst young people, cannabis use doesn't increase, and in some cases it decreases. So I would challenge the sort of gut instinct that people have that legalisation means we're going to see increased problems. That hasn't actually played out.
Janet, just wanting to get your comments on this because it's not just a young people thing, obviously, but it's been a tough year for all of us in New Zealand. It's been a rough one, and I suppose for some people they see marijuana use, recreational marijuana use, as a way of self-medicating to help them cope with the daily stresses of life. What would you think for somebody who's saying, hey, actually, this is just what helps me cope?
Yeah, well, to be honest, Andrew, it's not a real fix. It's just like alcohol to push reality back a bit. It's not going to fix anything. It's going to make the problem worse. You're going to have health issues. You're going to have, if your addiction gets out of control, your family will suffer. Your job will suffer. Everything suffers. And, I have to also question the idea that it's for public safety. And you don't want young people going to the tinny houses. Well, even if we legalise marijuana and say make it 20, illegal for 20 or over,
yeah.
Then what about those teens? They're still going to be going to the tinny houses. It just every piece of data that I've looked at from overseas points to increased harm in every single way. In some instances, there was a slight reduction of 2% of harm to teenagers going down. But in every other aspect of life and society, everything else went out of control.
Aaron, your thoughts on Ross's point. This is a health issue, not an issue of criminality. We're wanting to reduce the harm of marijuana in our society. There is definitely harm there, even whilst it is illegal. What's your view to the argument to say this is a health issue? This is about the health of our population. It's not about criminality.
Look, I think these end up being false choices that get played out. In reality, with respect to both the health aspect and the criminality aspect, we've already made really positive changes to our law. We've made medicinal cannabis legal. Unfortunately, the politicians made it expensive and very limited, so the sick and suffering couldn't get their hands on what they needed for their pain relief, and we want to see that law improved and fixed. We've also made a change to the Misuse of Drugs Act. We've written into law what was policing policy for 20 years. It now says in our law, if you get caught smoking a joint, you're to be referred to health services, not to be given a criminal conviction. And I have the latest conviction figures in front of me. 2,500 people in total got cannabis offence convictions in the last year in New Zealand, but only 591 of those were for cannabis alone. The rest were cannabis plus a whole bunch of other things. And of those who were cannabis alone, only 230 of them were for personal use or possession, and only 5 of those were given a jail sentence. So in reality, we don't actually criminalise people.
But isn't it better for people that are wanting to get marijuana to be able to pick it up from a specialist store on the high street instead of having to go to a tinny house and deal with gangs and drug dealers?
If the black market went away, but the black market does not go away. It remains a dominant player, and you set up a competitive environment. So in Canada, what we saw was the price of cannabis went down. Legal weed was $10 a gram, the black market equivalent $5.90. And that's the problem, is you create a competitive environment that means you've got two markets, a legal one and an illegal one, both trying to find new customers.
Ross, wanting to get your feedback to that. So gang involvement with drug dealing in New Zealand, that has gone hand in hand for many years now. This conversation about how to, bring this industry into the light, do you think that will reduce gang involvement in that area?
Look, it absolutely will. If we vote no, we guarantee that 100% of the market will remain in the hands of organised crime. So under legalisation, we've seen in Canada in less than 2 years, they've got more than half of the market has moved into the legal market, and knowing that that's after 50 or 60 years of prohibition, I think that's a pretty good success, and we're going to see that only get better. You know, I kind of get astounded that that people will pick a few minor holes in the law and even say only a handful of people are getting criminalised. But, you know, thankfully it's not your kids that are getting criminalised. You know, the reality is cannabis is here. What we have tried to do for a very long period of time has not worked. I kind of get quite annoyed. I know I'm on a different radio station, so I need to mind my P's and Q's. Yeah. But this whole idea that we're not criminalising people, knowing that 600,000 people are using cannabis, sure, we are only criminalising a handful. Why is it that we're happy for that small group of people to carry the burden for all those tens of thousands of people who use cannabis? I think that there is a social justice aspect here that gets ignored. The people that we are punishing, and we are still convicting people, I don't like the word only convicting people, we're convicting many people, and those people are young and they are Māori. And I think we need to wake up to the reality that we are still punishing people for what is still a health issue. And when I say health, I don't mean medical. Yeah. I mean, you know, we should be putting prevention services into schools to delay use. We should be giving advice to adults who, you know, around how to consume in less harmful ways. You know, the reality is cannabis is here. The model that everyone or the other panelists are advocating for, which is the status quo. The no vote means we keep the current system. It's a broken system, and I don't think it is defendable anymore.
Janet, just wanting to pick up on a comment you said beforehand about how, look, if we legalise marijuana, there's still other reasons that people will talk to the gangs and go to the drug dealers. From your own lived experience, marijuana in some ways the tip of the iceberg, that, I mean, there's comments about it being a gateway drug. What was your lived experience in terms of that?
Absolutely. We know that that's a fact. Marijuana is a gateway drug. Too harder drugs, it just normalises the idea of drug taking for people that normally wouldn't have considered it. I thought it was, you know, we know that with addiction, it's not about the drug taking, it's about the pain, it's about the underlying issues. Yeah. And like you said before, you know, what about the people that just want to take it to make them feel a bit better and be able to cope better and everything like that? The real way to deal with all that and get proper healing and life restoration is by seeking help for the deep heart issues, the brokenness, which is the driver, the pain, which is the driver for the addictions. Now, Paula Bennett was 50-50, couldn't decide whether she was pro or against. She went to Canada and had a look, and she came back with a resounding no, definitely not. Patrick Gower said also when he was in Canada, it seems like once you let this, once you legalise marijuana, it seems to take on a momentum of its own. And I think we're incredibly arrogant if we can think that from where we're standing, just choosing which information we choose to believe to suit our own agenda.
I mean, this is the opportunity for all of us as we go to the referenda, that we need to consider the information. We need to get viewpoints of a variety of people, and that's what we're doing as a part of the program today. Eloise, any comments or questions from the people on social media?
Yeah, there's been quite a few. So I guess we'll start with this one from Isaac. Wasn't the government planning on being smoke-free by 2025? And how does making cannabis legal aid in achieving this goal?
Anybody in particular want to go with that one?
Well, I've spoken to the head of the New Zealand Respiratory Foundation, and she says that they're opposed to this referendum. They're opposed to vaping, and were sad that the government rushed into vaping, because now still the most common ways cannabis is used is through smoking and through now vaping. But even the alternative of edibles concerns our medical community because dosage is a much huger problem with edibles. They're often much higher THC. It's much harder for people to monitor how much they've taken because the effect takes much longer to get in. So whether it's smoking or whether it's edibles, we have a problem, but certainly it seems inconsistent.
Ross, just wanting your comments on this. It does, legalising recreational marijuana does seem to be going the opposite direction of smoke-free Aotearoa. Your thoughts?
No, I mean, not at all. I just need to keep reminding everyone that cannabis is here. People are smoking it already. The smoke-free 2025 does not say we think prohibition is the way to go. We're going to hand the control of tobacco to organised crime. Instead, it says here's a target we want to hit, and here are the public health regulatory approaches we're going to take. We're going to educate young people. We're going to put a tax on it. We're going to get it off the shelves. We're going to put warning labels on it. We're not going to allow it to be advertised. So with tobacco, which kills over 5,000 people each year, we have decided that a public health approach is the right way to go. We're not throwing up our hands and saying to organised crime, hey guys, it's over to you. This is what we do with cannabis. And it's not working for us. So Smoke-Free 2025 isn't saying we're going to get rid of tobacco. It's saying people are still going to want to consume it, and here are some things we're going to do to reduce the harm.
I certainly appreciate the comments from all of the panellists and love to hear from you as well. If you're watching on the live stream, you can comment. We'll take more of comments from both the panellists and the people watching on the stream. That's coming up in just a moment. Okay, there we go. We are done into the second break. Guys, thank you very much for that. And Ross, I appreciate that you may feel that you're a bit sort of outnumbered, but we value your participation. It wouldn't be the same without you, and thank you for what you're bringing. So yeah, don't feel like this is a setup, mate. Thank you for what you're doing.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah. So we are jumping into the just at the end of the ad break. We'll do another set of that. We've got a lot of stuff that we need to cover, and I want to give everybody the opportunity to talk. So that last break was a little bit longer than would be ideal, so the next two need to be a little bit shorter, but I'll manage that. But just if we can, I suppose, stick to the core answer to the question rather than train of thought to the next thing, and that will give everybody an opportunity to have their say, if that's okay. And Janet, you were first up. You get the first question in the next break, if that's okay. And we'll take along from there. Eloise, we'll start with a question as well, though generally or a comment from somebody on the live stream. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And hey, welcome again to the people on the live stream. How many are we looking at? How many numbers or names or who?
Not great at maths.
Okay, sorry.
There's 27 on one, 20 on another, 5 and...
So a lot more than listen to Life FM regularly.
The numbers pick up and drop off all the time.
Totally.
Yeah.
So guys, if you could be more fascinating, that would really help our streaming numbers. Hey, that'd be great.
I'll take my shirt off.
Well,
that'll get
well, that will go one way or the other. Let's just say, let's just have a quick referendum on that. No, say nope to Aaron stripping.
We could talk about the role of the Church of Scientology and the Say No to Dope campaign. I think that would get listeners interested and engaged.
We could, however, and Ross, I appreciate that as your point of view. I don't think that would actually help our viewers or listeners make decisions. It's good point scoring for you, and I get that, but it may not help them to go, therefore I will, you know what I'm saying. I think there's good arguments on either side. If we stick to the argument rather than the player, then that would be more useful for our audience, if that's okay. But hey, dude, it's an open mic. We're live, so what you do is on you.
It's a boring answer. They're not actually involved other than,
Yeah, well, anyway, yeah.
It's a boring answer.
We are back. We are with the panel, Andrew Urquhart and Eloise Packham, hosting the show. And Eloise, we've got some more comments and questions from the people watching at home.
Yes, Judy has commented, New Zealand already has mental health issues that our medical system is unable to deal with. Why overload it further with increased demand caused by psychosis and other mental health issues associated with cannabis use?
Again, we'll do this as open mic. Is anybody wanting to comment specifically on this one?
Good question. I'd like Ross to answer that one.
Ross, any thoughts?
I'm happy to. The fear that people have, again, it's this equation: legalisation, you increase use, you increase harm, including mental health issues. We've not seen that. We've not seen that in jurisdictions that have legalised. Increases in use tend to be amongst adults, and they tend to be amongst people over the age of 50. We're not seeing heavy use increase. We're not seeing youth use increase. So actually, I don't think we're going to get.
Look, both of those things are untrue. I can't let that go unchallenged. I spoke to Professor Christian Thurston from the University of Colorado's Denver School of Medicine. He said that their hospitalization rates in Colorado have gone up. Their emergency room visits from those having cannabis-induced psychosis is going up. And the legal states of the US, their adolescent use of cannabis is higher than the non-legal states. And you're welcome to go and look at the stats. They're all there.
We will get back to this point, but thank you, gentlemen, for both of your, for everybody for their comments on this one. Janet, wanting to pose a question to you, because, I mean, it's important to recognise we're talking about the recreational use of cannabis. We're not talking about medicinal cannabis. That bill has already passed, and there are comments about how expensive it is and how inaccessible it is to those who need it. What's your thoughts on medicinal marijuana? Do you think it's here to stay? It's an important part of our health system?
I think that, there may be a place for it for people that are on that bandwagon. But there's inherent difficulties with the legislation around that and with the way it's been rolled out, like Aaron said, making it ridiculously expensive that people can't afford it. So what is the point in that? My concern is that there are a lot of claims that are made about medicinal marijuana that are not backed up by science, and everybody, because it's what they want to hear, they just start going, oh yeah, it cures this, it cures that, it cures everything else.
I mean, there is feedback to say that it does have therapeutic effects for some people. I suppose the question in some people's minds, Aaron, is that if it can be used, if people are using it therapeutically, how harmful can it be?
Well, indeed, this is the reason the New Zealand Medical Association opposes the legislation, because they're very concerned that people will bypass the doctor and say, you know what, I've decided that I can use cannabis without getting a prescription, without knowing what's in that product. There's some research came out recently that showed 47 different medications that stopped working properly if you started using cannabis. Now, your doctor's job is to know what the interaction between medications is. So we're saying, look, stay with the doctor, stay with products that are made from the plant. The NZMA say, look, the plant is not medicine. Products made from ingredients in the plant are medicine.
It does seem, though, the medical service or medical industry in New Zealand are a little bit gun-shy when it comes to prescribing or investigating the use of medical marijuana.
Well, this comes to Janet's point. 79% of Kiwi doctors are reluctant to prescribe because the jury is out for so many of the claims. We know a couple of areas seem pretty clear. If you're going through chemotherapy, it's really great for nausea. If you have some kinds of seizures, it seems to be really good for managing those. Everything else are mixed bags in terms of the reports. It's yet to be that the doctors are saying confidently, yes, this definitely works. Now, look, we want to see more research. There's clearly some benefit to be had, but let's strengthen the medicinal area one law at a time.
Ross, you wanted to get Ross's comments on this as well, because, with medical marijuana, it is the thing of saying, hey, let's bring it into the light. Let's get some research. Let's get some protocol. Let's get some regulation and safety around it. Ross, this is basically what you're asking for recreational as well, isn't it?
Well, there's a few benefits that come with legal regulation, but patients will get those proven products. They will know what they're buying. At the moment when they go to the black market, they don't know what's in it. They don't know, the different ratios. Actually, I find on this issue, patients are well ahead of medical professionals. I would expect doctors to get educated, and they seem, for whatever reason, unwilling to do that. We've seen enough patients who benefit. We've seen enough research from around the world to show the benefits. But also we have to remember, not every medicine is a prescription. a lot of medicines are over the counter. I think what you're going to see with cannabis products, certainly what we've seen overseas, is that people will be able to get over the counter products that they know work for them for whatever their condition is. It may not be terminal illnesses, it might be to help with anxiety or sleep, things that you wouldn't always expect a doctor to need to prescribe. But we're saying that legalization will make it more affordable and give a broader range of products for patients, meaning that they will not have to go to the black market, which is where they're going to now.
Back to I suppose, the recreational use of marijuana, because this is something that certainly muddies the waters in terms of people's thinking, what are we actually voting on here? It is the recreational use of marijuana and decriminalising that. There is, talk about let's bring this into the open, let's make sure we've got the support and the safety and the regulations to care for people who are currently using. But Ross, to be fair, they said that about synthetics, and that is still a huge problem in our society.
Actually, when we regulated synthetics, we didn't see the problems that we now do today. When we mucked up that law and drove synthetics to the black market, that's actually when we started seeing all the deaths happening. And so, with alcohol and tobacco, we're not saying let's hand those over to the criminals. Again, we need to get real. Cannabis is here. It's being used by a whole lot of people. Majority of people who are using it don't have addiction, aren't getting into problems. And so, they're not going to overwhelm either our treatment or our mental health services. Adults are using cannabis for fun, and there's nothing, I think we should actually, legalise to give those adults that choice.
Aaron, your thoughts on the argument which says, hey, actually, this is just good for the economy. Why should the gangs be making all the money on this? Why not something which is a part of our economy, albeit in the black market at the moment? Why can't these people be paying tax? We'll put GST on this. We need some innovative ways for our economy to recover. Maybe this is one of them.
I'd like to explain what happened when Canada's legal market finally beat the black market. It happened because they finally decided to match the black market's price. They created what they call value products, which was $6 a gram, which matched the black market. And here's what's happened in Canada in the last few months. 3 of the largest companies have posted these losses. Cronos has posted a $35 million loss, Organigram posted a $100 million loss, and Aurora Cannabis, the biggest company in Canada, just posted a $3 billion loss. So I wouldn't be too quick to cash in the tax money, because it turns out in order to be competitive, you have to crash the price of cannabis, which makes it not profitable for the legal market. But in reality, let's just think about the philosophy we're saying. We're saying that we want to sell cannabis to adults, to raise tax money, to fund programs to teach teenagers not to do what the adults are doing. It makes no sense. That's broken.
Janet, you're based in Northland, and can I say respectfully, some of the best marijuana in the world is grown in the hills around where you live. For these rural communities, could this be a shot in the arm? Could this be a way of people who are underemployed and looking for a legitimate way to have a rural lifestyle which puts food on the table of their children? Could this be a good thing for the community in which you live?
To me, the way I see it is it would be throwing gasoline on the fire to set up a system that supports addicts. So no, I don't agree with the argument that it's for the kids, it's to create a better lifestyle, because in reality what will happen is that they're throwing their kids under the bus.
Ross, I just want to give you the opportunity to comment on what Aaron was saying beforehand, because, yes, if we legalise recreational use of marijuana, you'll be able to buy it from perhaps a specialty store on the high street. But the question is, what will this do to the underground market? Will there just be 2 parallel systems, one which has overpriced low THC, and if you want the really good stuff, you still need to go to the tinny house?
No, if you vote no, you're guaranteed 100% of the market will stay in the hands of organised crime. A yes vote is going to decimate to a large extent the black market, and where it doesn't, so you will still get the black market supplying to under 20s, and so you can focus on that. If people want higher strength products, because there is going to be potency is going to be limited for safety at about 15 percent, and if people want higher than that, then there is the opportunity under the law for them to grow their own. I think what you're going to end up seeing is kind of more of a connoisseur market, like we do with boutique beers, where it's not going to be big business. In fact, big business won't be allowed to happen. The way that the market's going to be structured, there's going to be limitations on how big these industries are going to be. I think we're going to see those communities that are relying on the economy now will be able to move into the light with legitimate jobs and pay tax. And if that tax gets ring-fenced and put back into drug education and treatment, I see absolutely no problem with that whatsoever.
Yeah.
This question of whether the black market will transition is interesting because the Curle report has laid out the structure of 1 gram of cannabis. And you're only allowed to have a license for one part of the process. So you can be a grower, you can be a manufacturer, and you can be a retailer, but you can't be more than one of those things. And each of those in the chain is only allowed to earn $1 of the 20. Now, if you're the black market, you currently earn $20 of the 20.
Yeah.
So the thought that people are going to give up the profitable black market to earn $1 on every gram seems very unlikely to me.
Well, it seems like, I mean, you'd do a bacteria count on the milk of human kindness. I'd like to think that our fellow man might see an opportunity to do good things for their fellow man. Appreciate your point, though. Eloise, some more comments coming through from people watching the live stream?
Yeah, so Susanna was wondering how accessible will it become? Will it be in dairies, corner shops, and how hard would it be to get a licence?
Interesting point. Ross, firstly, did you want to jump in on that one?
So no, dairies, supermarkets won't be allowed to sell it. You can only get a licence. Specialty cannabis stores will be the only people that can sell it. There's obviously a process to go through to get that licence. The Curle report estimated there'll be around 400 stores. They have to be dotted across the country and not clustered in certain communities as we have with alcohol and gambling. You're not going to really know that they're a cannabis store. There'll be really modest branding on the front, but inside there'll be trained staff who can, show you all the products, and adults can.
And Aaron, just really wanting to bring you on this one because there's been some social media from the Say No to Dope campaign, which I must say very funny, very eye-catching, but also very inaccurate. An image of a local dairy with kids scooting past it, and they've, instead of having Coca-Cola branding, they've got marijuana branding, having marijuana sponsoring the All Blacks. This isn't reality, really, is it? It's scaremongering.
The ASA said that there were no grounds for any of those complaints. In fact, in their decision, they actually said that the image of a dairy that had been recast now as a cannabis store met the criteria of the proposed legislation. They said it was immensely possible. And of course, kids are outside all kinds of stores. And that was our point. You see, in Featherston, when the Kia Ora Dairy became an alcohol store, the people of Featherston complained and said, this is terrible. Yeah. And we simply asked the question, well, what happens if your favourite family business becomes the local cannabis store, and suddenly what was a place where you're happy to have kids outside is a place where it doesn't make you feel comfortable?
But if your social media is misleading, I mean, regardless of what the ASA said.
Well, the ASA said it wasn't misleading. So based on what?
Look, if this is not helping people make an informed decision, but it's just capturing attention.
But that is informed, because any shop could, just like the Featherston Dairy became the Featherston Alcohol Shop, there's no reason why a dairy couldn't become a cannabis shop in this future world.
Well, we certainly appreciate the comments and feedback from all of the panellists, and the view of this program is to help you make an informed decision as you head to the polling booths and make the choice, yes or no, for the recreational use of marijuana. Back with more from the panel. That's coming up in just a moment. You having fun yet?
You're allowed to push back.
Oh, no, I will. In fact, it would be wrong for me not to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
do you want to keep your mic on while we're doing this, just so it can because we're not live, so we're out of program. Just keep it on so that the social media can pick up. Are you okay with that?
Oh, yes, just I clear my throat a lot, so I didn't want to clear my throat into people's ears.
Appreciate that. Yeah. Okay, we are 11:45, so we're into our final commercial break. The next section will be our last one, and yeah, we will start again with a question from social media.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although random comment.
Yeah.
Isaac has said, I'll be honest, seeing Aaron's voice come out of his mouth is weird. I've only heard his voice on the radio with ads.
Imagine how weird it is for him.
Yeah, it's weird for me. I've never seen it come out of my mouth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay.
But I have a different question. I just want to mention that.
I
Yeah.
need to
That's
clarify
funny.
something I said about medical.
Oh yeah. No, we can jump into that, or we've got some things that we're wanting to move forward on. One of the things that I'm really wanting to.
Okay.
So whatever you do.
Yeah. Just well, this is a good heads up. Just really in this last section, wanting to be really fact driven. What are we saying yes or no to? And what are the actual things that are being proposed, so that we know that I may not be a reefer addict, but that I'm not. What are we saying yes to or no to? Oh, we're in. Yeah, cool. Thanks. You are with the panel, some good conversations. In fact, we're getting carried away with conversations and didn't realise the ad break had finished. So, Eloise, thank you for pointing that out. Lots of comments as well from social media. What have you got for us?
Karen has said New Zealand has a binge culture unlike anything overseas, and as a result we do have mental health, addiction and suicide figures that are shameful. How can we look at the results the rest of the world is seeing and think we would look anything like that, as we're quite different?
Any takers on this question? The binge culture that we have in New Zealand?
Very good comment. We do have a binge culture. I think that we do need to look at what's happening overseas. I don't know how people can ignore the social devastation on the United States, the homelessness. It's just, what Paula Bennett said, that New Zealand is going down in all of the statistics for smoking cannabis, smoking cigarettes and alcohol. So why would we change?
There's also an aspect whereby, there's this image, Ross, of the thinking man's cigarette. This is a millennial with a groomed beard, having a sly joint in the weekend with friends, and then playing backgammon. Actually, marijuana use recreationally is more represented in people who are doing very, very badly in a lot of social measures. This is likely to be the habit of choice for people who are really struggling in many other areas of life. Any thoughts?
Look, the majority of people who use cannabis, enjoy it recreationally without problem. For people who have a problem, whether it's their cannabis use or alcohol use, there are going to be other issues. And for us to oversimplify it and say they have these problems, including this claim that there's going to be increased homelessness, they have these problems because of cannabis, I think deeply misunderstands what's going on in New Zealand society. I'm not going to say that legalisation is going to fix all of New Zealand's very complicated social ills, but nor am I going to say that it's going to make those problems worse. I think as a country, we've got to do a whole lot more to addressing the whole of the social inequality, but that is not being caused by cannabis.
It may be a little bit of a chicken and egg. Is the social problems caused by the cannabis, or are the social problems causing people to go to cannabis?
There's no way these social problems are being caused by cannabis. People who might use cannabis to cope or forget or whatever, they're not doing that because of cannabis. They've got problems that we should be dealing with anyway. But, the claim that cannabis is creating those or is going to make those problems worse, I think is irresponsible.
Aaron, just wanting to jump in on something here for you. Some people might say, well, it's all right for you to be opposed to marijuana law reform because your mood-enhancing drug of choice is already legal. What's your thoughts to that?
I think behind this alcohol argument is two things. One, they're very different kind of trajectories. So prohibition of alcohol was a relatively brief phenomenon in the 1920s. So it's a different kind of thing. We've had a long period since any kind of prohibition. By contrast, cannabis prohibition has been much longer, so the black market is so much more established. It's a different kind of a thing. I think also behind the question is this hope that maybe we would say, well, alcohol is so bad, maybe if people sort of transition from alcohol to cannabis, that would be, somewhat better. But the problem is, Renee Goodwin did research of 27,000 Americans. She followed them for 3 years. And this is what she found, that those who use cannabis first were more likely to develop alcohol abuse problems, and those who used cannabis were 5 times more likely to have an alcohol abuse issue.
Looking at the actual legislation, what it says, what it doesn't say, what is being proposed on this one, one of the statements is that if we're looking at decriminalising cannabis for recreational use, that it will be strictly illegal for anybody under the age of 20 years, so that it's not going to be impacting the mental health of our young people, because this piece of legislation will be a part of that as a baseline. Janet, how confident are you that type of, okay, it's not for the kids, it's for 20 plus, how confident are you that type of legislation could be effective?
Absolutely. It's hypocritical. We saw it when we lowered the alcohol drinking age, and more people, yet the younger set again, where it just opened it up to them again. Now, I just have to clarify, sorry, Andrew,
that's right.
that the comment you mentioned a couple of times about decriminalisation, it's actually legalisation that we're talking about, and they're very different. Mm-hmm. So in a way, we've already got, in a way, people are not being criminalised for recreational use.
No, that is an important point, and sorry that if I got that one wrong, I've kind of put them both in the same basket there. Ross, from your point of view, you're in favour of having the conversation of saying, hey, if this is something where we are looking at, let's at least make sure that we've got the safeguards in place, rather than something which the government or the corporation or corporations do without the public having to have a say.
Oh, sorry, I didn't quite understand the question.
The aspect of my understanding, at least, and sorry if I get this wrong again, is that part of your argument is, let's take this opportunity to talk about how to get this type of legislation right. Let the people have their say in what legalising marijuana legislation would look like, rather than that being a government decision.
Yeah, well, look, no, I don't think there should be a referendum. I think that there should have been a bill that works its way through the House like any other bill, and we were hoping the government would have done something more sensible. So I actually don't support lawmaking by referendums, but if people vote yes, then the bill will get introduced to the House, and that normal state committee public engagement, can happen. I actually think the government's done a really good job, despite the fact that they developed this kind of behind closed doors. They didn't get a whole lot of public input into the drafting of the bill. They've done a really good job. If you measure this against alcohol law and tobacco law, they've actually started really strict. The problems that we've seen with alcohol and historically with tobacco law, where we've been too loose, we're actually starting quite strict with this law. So you've got the R20, you've got the no advertising, so we don't have to fight the industry. We're already locking that into place. We're moderating how big the industry is. We're putting purchase limits in place. So we're actually putting all these really good controls in place. It's so much better than alcohol and tobacco law, and arguably it's probably a very good model that we could use for things like alcohol.
Some people would say this is where perhaps tobacco and alcohol should have been 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
What the legislation is proposing is up to 40 joints a day is legal for one person to smoke. How is that good control? What sort of tone is that setting? I used to smoke.
There's no purchase limits for alcohol. People don't go out and buy, 6 bottles of wine and drink that all in one go. It's not a target. You don't have to smoke your 14 grams all in one go. It's more likely that people will buy a month's supply. 14 grams for most people is kind of 2 or 3 weeks.
I suppose that is
all your toilet paper in one.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose that is the difference between somebody who's saying, hey, this is something which I do in the weekends for fun, and this is an addiction problem that I have. Whereas an alcoholic may drink all 6 bottles of wine in a night. Somebody who has a drug problem may go, hey, 40 joints a day, bring it on.
Yeah.
Well, it's the pretense of control is the problem. It doesn't provide any real framework to help people with problematic behaviour. Now, I know as a former user that any time we got our hands on large quantities of marijuana, we did not make it last a long time. We went on a bender and we smoked it till it was gone.
That's right.
Because you had a problem. Most people don't. You have to acknowledge that the vast majority of people who use cannabis do not have a cannabis dependency.
The overseas figures show that cannabis use increases once legalisation has occurred from, I've got it here somewhere, but it went from 900 to 9 million. I think it was Colorado. It more than doubles.
Janet, sorry to cut across because we are coming down to the final couple of minutes of the program. So let's just say how you'll be voting and why. You've got a minute on that. Aaron, starting with you.
We've made 2 important law changes. We've made medicinal cannabis legal. We've made a change to the Misuse of Drugs Act so you won't be criminalised for smoking a joint. And the effects overseas, it's too soon to know. Let's stand back and watch. Let somebody else do the experiment, because I don't want to throw a generation of our young people under the bus and put them into an experiment, a social experiment that they've not had informed consent over.
I think your time's up on that one. Janet, a minute on how you'll be voting and why.
I'll be voting against. I'm deeply concerned about the potency and the concentrates that will be legal under this legislation. Which people will have access to 99.8% potent THC.
Yep.
And also Revelation 18, in Revelation 18, it says, as people who believe in the word of God, in those days the nations will be deceived by sorcery, which means pharmakios, which is an enchantment with drugs.
Ross, we'll give you the final word on this one. How will you be voting and why?
Look, I am going to be voting yes, obviously, because we have a system right now that does not work, and the proposal put forward by the government is actually a really good public health approach. It's may not be perfect. It's going to do a much better job than we're currently doing. So I'm voting yes because I live in the real world.
Well, I certainly appreciate all of the comments and you guys playing reasonably nicely. I think that this has been very helpful for our listeners to making an informed choice. Eloise, finally to you. I think you're probably the only person on the panel that's never smoked marijuana, so we're not going to ask you for your vote on that one. But any final comments from the people that are watching and are participating on social media?
Yeah, everyone's been loving the discussion today. And don't forget, it will stay on Facebook after, so you can go and watch it. And then we'll be putting it up on the website as well after.
Hey, thanks very much for being part of the panel. Kia ora, and we'll join you again. We've got another one of these panels coming up next Wednesday. But thanks very much for all of the panel participants. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Ross. Really, really appreciate that. And
awesome.
Thanks
so much.
I think there's some good points made in various ways. And and it wouldn't have been the same without you, mate. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much.